So in isolation, doing a video explaining why we've dried off some culls, and I figure it'll help you all in terms of my props if you see that there's also a 3.6 metre long caterpillar called Edgar here to help me explain this. So we have had a question come in saying why have we dried off the culls and not dried off more light cows that need to gain weight, and ultimately it comes down to a feed budget, but more importantly everyone needs to understand the rules and situations that the farmlets are in. And so I'll introduce you to the Southern Dairy Hub. So we have our 4 farmlets. They share a cow shed, they share a tanker track, and their paddocks are all next to each other, but in reality they're actually 4 separate little farms with 4 separate sets of rules. So welcome over here to Team Pink. These are the standard kale cows. 3.1 cows a hectare is the stocking rate at peak. 200 kilos of nitrogen applied per hectare per year as fertiliser, and access to in-shed feeding throughout the season, plus we winter these girls on kale. Down here we have the low impact or blue cows, low impact kale cows. So these also winter on kale like these girls, but we have a lower stocking rate. So we're 2.6 cows a hectare here, and we only put on 50 kilos a hectare of nitrogen fertiliser to the pasture. So that's why we have a lower stocking rate, because we put on less nitrogen to grow less grass, theoretically. Also have access to in-shed feeding, also winter on kale. So 2 kale herds. Over here we've got Team Green. Team Green are the fodder beet cows, the standard fodder beet cows, so like the pinks, 3.1 cows a hectare, 200 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per year to the pasture, no in-shed feeding, and obviously winter on fodder beet. And then down here, Team Yellow, 2.6 cows a hectare, like the blue cows, 50 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per year onto the pasture, like the blue cows, eat fodder beet, like the green cows, and no access to in-shed feeding. So got the 2 kale cows, the 2 fodder beet cows, the 2 standard cows, and the 2 low impact herds. And so each of these situations right now is fundamentally quite different. So over here in Team Pink, we've got cull cows still on, pretty ugly, pretty wooden, not the flexible animals we're looking for in the future, as opposed to this cute little girl here. Had 50 bales of baleage left this autumn when we did our feed budget. So when we did our feed budgets, we set aside spring milker baleage. So there's 70 bales for the standard herds and 50 for the low impact herds from their spring feed budget that they need to keep. And so once we took that out of the baleage they'd made for the year, this is how much homemade baleage they had left over for the rest of the season. Now the pink cows have also got access to in-shed feeding. There is a finite amount that I've got in my budget to refill those things, but we've still got plenty of feed to do what we need to do. Plenty of baleage, and we've only fed 7 of their bales to them this autumn since we started the feed budget at the beginning of March. So right now, those cows there, these guys have got the highest pasture cover. In fact, we're struggling to control and hit residual in them, so there's no point drying off cows we don't need to. But these cows, we can't get them to gain weight quickly enough to ensure they meet their calving targets. And that's because we know in a kale system we'll really struggle to put weight on cows over the winter, so we have to get it done now. So last week we dried off 13 light cows because that's what was most at risk and couldn't make any milk for the rest of the season. Needed to dry off, needed to gain some weight, proper and good. But their feed budget overall is really tidy. Heaps of grass, heaps of in-shed feeding, heaps of baleage. We want as many cows and milk as long as possible, but we will dry off based on condition. Low impact kales, look at this mountain of silage they've got. So they have got the same situation, access to in-shed feeding, heaps of baleage available, although they've fed a bit more than the pinks. But again, we've had to dry off 13 cows because of body condition, because these girls are just milking too well and wouldn't gain weight quickly enough. So we've got the constraint of body condition here we're having to make decisions around, but it's not a shortage of feed. It's a behaviour thing for the cows. So these ones, we've still got the culls and milk. So for now, we've got the culls still on the farm, but we will look to get rid of them later. In the green cows, we had 77 bales set aside for the autumn, so 20 or 50% more than we had for the pinks. No in-shed feeding, however, and as you can see, we've already fed out 22 of their bales, so that's the most bales any herd's eaten this autumn, but we still have quite a few left. Pasture cover's in pretty good shape, but our options are a bit limited. Now, body condition is not an issue in this herd. Because we know how much weight we can pack on over winter, cows have got a much longer window and a stronger window for putting on weight. So there's like 2 cows here that we might look at drying off next week, because the BCS is a bit below where we need it to be. But on the whole, their decisions are made around how much feed have I got to the end of season and can we make the maths work. When we dried off cows last week, we did dry off the Yoni's culls out of this herd, which was 5 cows who we had data on to show they weren't gaining weight or possibly losing weight, and we didn't want to risk them shedding in the herd or becoming an issue, so we dried off a handful of cows for that reason. But for now they're okay, but they're just tight enough. They've got the tightest feed wedge relative to demand at the moment, but they do have a lot of baleage still. So then we come down to the low impact fodder beet cows. Now we did the feed budget and these guys only needed 30 bales for winter, for the autumn period. And so that was great. They've already eaten 20 of them. They've only got 10 of their own bales left for the rest of the season. No in-shed feeding, so that's a problem. Again, just like the green herd, body condition score for these cows is largely not an issue because of how much our feed budget will allow us to put on over winter with feeding fodder beet. However, there are, again, a couple of cows, probably a few more, so there's about 5 or 6 cows in here we might look at drying off next week that are just a bit lighter than we need them to be. However, lowest pasture cover of the group sits on this farmlet, lowest growth rate. We've already fed most of their baleage, and so 10 bales is a bit dumb. I had 20 bales set aside that they'd made this year that were going to go out onto their crop paddocks, which meant they had to buy and lease crop baleage, so that would have affected their profit in a good way. But right now we really need that for milk. So we've pulled that out of their crop allocation, and I've had to buy 20 extra crop bales to go on their crop. But that's done, so that's fine. And then to make it a little bit better, I do have a little secret stash of spare baleage, purchase of baleage that's available to the herds, but we don't want to use a lot of that as a routine. So what I've done is we've already deployed 10 bales of that over into the reserves for the yellows. But even with this, based on where their cover's at the moment, we would need to look at drying off the entire herd around the 10th of May because we've run out of feed options for this herd, not because body condition score's a problem. So what we've done is we've said fat, empty, lazy, useless, whatever the cull was, the yellow culls have been pulled out of their system from a feed budget point of view, not from a body condition score point of view. So over here we've got cows we need to dry off because they're not gaining weight fast enough, but feed is not limiting. Over here we've got cows that are in great condition relative to their winter feeding regime, but there isn't enough feed to keep non-essential cows and milk on the platform, and we've got space to get these cows off the yellows milking platform in a few spots around the farm and also to the runoff, and we've got a bit of extra hay and bits and pieces we can feed to those culls. So the farm system impact is really, really important here. And you kind of go, but Louise, you've got a mountain of silage for the blues. In fact, the blues aren't even going to be able to eat all of that this autumn, almost guaranteed, and these guys haven't got enough. Why don't you share? Well, we can't take off the pinks because Betty doesn't share food. We can't take off the greens because they need it because they're kind of tight. And if you wanted to take off the blues, answer me this. If your neighbour had more silage in their pit than you had in yours, would you be able to use it? The answer is kind of no. So even though we are 4 farms down one tanker track and inside the same boundary, in reality, they're separate entities, and we've got to keep it like that. So what we see ultimately is the different positions they're in now, the different amount of animals they're able to milk for different reasons, all flows through into the end of season production and financials as a function of how their farm system operates. And that's really important for research for us to help understand some of the questions that we need to answer. So hopefully that helps you understand our feed budget and why we're drying off light cows in some herds, drying off culls in other herds, and some herds are just cruising along for the moment.